Black Myth Wukong is really looking to be something special, and this thing is coming out right around the corner. With the final reveal trailer coming out, it looks like we have some of the most stunning new bosses to take a look at, way more options when it comes to our forms that we're able to shapeshift into, and loads of new abilities. I'm all about the hype train when it comes to these types of games, but this one looks to be well worth that hype. Black Myth Wukong is an action RPG based on the novel Journey to the West, which is Chinese folklore that was published way back in the day in the 16th century during the Ming Dynasty. Published by Game Science, we play as Wukong, the Monkey King. And as we explore these new lush environments and battle immense bosses, we're also going to feel some similarities between other games in the genre. Now, even though we're going to be running around in this new, beautiful, Chinese mythology-inspired environments, we're still going to be collecting souls, which is called will in this game. You're still going to have your little shrines to rest at, and we got ourselves a gorge that functions exactly like an Estus flask would. You lose a portion of your experience when you die. I mean, this is all sounding pretty familiar to us, right? It almost sounds like a Souls-like, but don't kid yourself, because there's actually a lot that makes this game different, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about here today. So first things first, let's talk a bit about combat. And one of my favorite mechanics being introduced in this game is shapeshifting into different forms, with upwards of 72 confirmed different forms we could change into. And the way we're going to be gaining these additional forms is by defeating bosses around the world, by either grabbing their weapon or absorbing their energy in some way. As an example, in this case of the Fireblade Wolf form, we could see Sun Wukong picking up the Fire Staff from the boss once he's defeated. But in the case of this big blueberry boss, you could see its energy being absorbed in this flask above our head. We've seen plenty of footage on how the Fireblade Wolf form works. This is going to be our super fast-paced, very agile attack form with the addition of some fire damage. Then you could see here we have our tank form, which is severely reducing our movement speed, but it makes up for it in its toughness. With its burly body being able to take substantial amount of attacks, we're still able to slam down on enemies and what looks like even putting out some small AoE around us. But there's so many forms with different pros and cons, and this is one of the few spices of life that Wukong is throwing into the mix to change things up. This alone will increase the longevity of this game, and with New Game Plus already being confirmed, I could see a bunch of different playthroughs and playstyles in our future. We also have spells to go alongside these transformations. They work just as you would expect. They're magic abilities that cost mana, and they have a cooldown. The starting spells we get is an Immobilize, which is pretty cool because these actually work on bosses, and is going to make some of these other enemies easy pickings for a brief moment. Your mana is limited, so you can't just spam out spells nonstop, but it seems like there's going to be a way to unlock additional health gorges, and I'm expecting some way to extend our mana bar as well. One specific spell I'm really liking though is the ability to split into multiple clones of yourself, which is one of the Monkey King's most famous abilities in the original story. Another thing that makes this game different than others, we don't have a dedicated parry or block button, and for me this is a big change. I mean, you know, all the games these days have them. Elden Ring, Lies of P, Sekiro, Star Wars, I mean they're all about parries, and I'm not complaining, I'm just saying this is just another change up that they're throwing at us. Having a game like this come along without a dedicated parry button or even a block button really stands out. In Black Myth, your combat tools are a little bit more focused in. We're only going to have one kind of weapon, the Monkey King's magical staff, a regular combo button that can be held down to perform heavy attacks, magic spells that rely on mana, you got your jump, you got your dodge. I mean, outside of the no block or parry, we pretty much got our standards, but in this game it's all going to be about that dodge button. This is going to be our primary way of avoiding damage, and from all the previews I've seen, it looks very forgiving. It seems like there's going to be a pretty large invulnerability window. It kind of reminds me of how Lords of the Fallen was with its forgiving iframes, but this is just my speculation from what I've seen. We got ourselves a stamina meter that you'll have to manage, which is right out of a Souls game. There's a boatload of defensive abilities that seem to work like a parry, whether it's a spell or a transformation, we'll have to wait and see on that. There are more combat mechanics I want to get into, but let's chill for a second and take stock in how good this game actually looks though. The visuals in this thing are absolutely top notch. Like, you almost can't mention this game without bringing up the visuals. There is some legitimate next gen stuff going on up in here. They showed off the starting area, Blackwind Mountain, and everything just seems to be carefully rendered with things that just have some extreme attention to detail. But not only does the world itself look shockingly realistic, but the bosses are actually the real highlight. I mean, their opening cutscenes, like, did you all see this? Like, it's crazy. The combat looks really smooth and seamless. It doesn't look like there's any jankiness or awkwardness with how the combat works, and I haven't heard of any complaints with how the game performs either. All the people who managed to play the 2-hour demo said the same exact thing, that the game is running buttery smooth, so that's a good sign. Since we're speaking about performance, here are the spec requirements for both the PS5 and PC versions of the game. And listen, if you're enjoying this video, think about hitting that like button for me. It would mean a lot. Thanks so much, everybody. And you already know the amount of games that come out with the bad PC ports. It's absolutely ridiculous, and how the PC is kind of swept under the rug on a lot of these high profile titles. But this game does not seem to look that way at all, because the PC demo seemed to easily run the demo lightning quick, which definitely bodes well for the final release. The next thing being brought to us with this game is stances. Now, how this works is you're going to build up your focus by doing damage to enemies, and once you get a charge built up, you can use it to perform a highly damaging special attack, with these special attacks varying between the different stances, which there are 3 of. The stances that we know about are a smash stance, which allows you to perform a quick smash attack in the middle of a combo. It looks very powerful and actually can stagger the enemies for a few seconds. The next stance is the pillar stance, and this one looks really interesting. Wukong is going to stand on top of his staff and extend it to rise above the arena. It does use stamina to stay up there, but while you're up high, you could pretty much avoid any attack that the boss is going to be throwing at you. I don't believe that this is just here for specific scripted moments in the game. I think this is a power you could use at like any time, which makes this extremely powerful. So the general combat flow of Black Myth will be using our weak, light attacks to build up our special bar that allows us for more devastating attacks and special abilities. We don't know what that third stance is yet, and that's okay. They got to keep some things under the radar. Next, I wanted to touch on difficulty a bit, and it's definitely more on the forgiving side than your typical quote-unquote Souls-like. They do want to make this more accessible to everyone. I've heard it's going to be more on par with like Jedi Fallen Order rather than being on the side of Elden Ring. Now, I'm not saying this means it's going to be walking the park easy. If you look at all these bosses, they're like super aggressive, and you're going to have to learn movesets and timings to their abilities. But as I said, it looks like the iframes on this dodge roll is way more forgiving, and I could definitely go for that. And this brings me to the next thing that I'm kind of looking forward to for a change. Black Myth is not an open world. I wanted to make that clear. The previews may give the impression that it's an Elden Ring style open world, but coming straight from the developer's mouth, that is not the case. According to them, the game will be split into linear levels or chapters. You will be on rails following the main storyline as you progress through the game. You may find some hidden areas, maybe stowing some loot or a fresh encounter with a new boss, but for the most part, they're going with a very storyline driven game. And I'm kind of a big fan of that for a change. Not saying anything bad about open world games, but it's just nice to sometimes be able to turn your brain off and just enjoy some story, streamlined, beautiful content. From the bosses, visuals, combat looking all fantastic, I'm truly hoping for the best and that this turns out to be something special, because honestly, the potential that's been shown to us is off the charts. But let me know your thoughts on the game in the comments below. Hit that like button if you liked the video, subscribe, and feel free to check out one of these other videos coming up on your screen next. Toodles!